You'd think it makes sense to make a video on something people have actually watched, or at least seen recently, but nope. I'm going to talk about Fantastic Mr. Fox. On that note, though, before we get into the whole deal here of how I think Ash can be read as trans, I do think I need to give a thorough recap of the film. Obviously not as ideal as just watching the film and then watching the next part of this video, but that's a lot to ask, so I'm still going to give a very in-depth recap. Starting off, we're introduced to our titular character and his wife, Felicity Fox, as they head to steal some squabs, whatever they are, from a farm. Mr. Fox gets them trapped in a cage where Felicity reveals she's pregnant, and if they live, she wants them to stop stealing birds. Cut to 12 Fox years later, to regular years, and Fox is a newspaper columnist, and their home is a hole in the ground. We're introduced to their son, Ash, who naturally we'll be discussing much more later. Fox doesn't like feeling poor and living underground, so he wants to move somewhere else in spite of Felicity's warnings. He checks out a nice tree, and this gives us our first introduction to Kylie, and first sight of the three farms the owners act as the antagonists. A little later, Fox talks to his lawyer, Badger, who lays out that he really shouldn't buy this tree, and gives the lowdown on the farmers, Bogus, Bunce, and Bean, who all you really need to know are rather ruthless. Fox ignores the advice and buys the tree. Shortly after moving in, we're introduced to Christopherson, Ash's cousin, who is staying with the Foxes because his dad is hospitalized with double pneumonia. Our first scene with them together is everyone hanging out outside, with Ash clumsily jumping into a pool, where his father does not care much, followed by Christopherson doing an incredible dive which actually impresses Fox, which annoys Ash. Fox conscripts Kylie into his eventual scheme, and then we get another scene with Ash and Christopherson where Ash is a dick because he's upset. But when Christopherson starts sniffling, he shows a little compassion and turns on his model train set to cheer his cousin up. Next, Fox explains his plan for stealing from Bogus before we get a little more with Ash Christopherson, now at school, and are introduced to Agnes, who is a minor character but lightly relevant to things to come later. Agnes is lab partners with Ash, but is really interested in Christopherson, much to Ash's chagrin. Back to Fox and Kylie, now putting the plan to steal from Bogus in action. Fox's fear of wolves is mentioned, but this is only relevant to one thing way later. The plan goes off without much of a hitch, aside from some shocks, and Fox disguises his steal from Felicity in an attempt to hide that he's stealing again. Part 2 of the plan goes even more easily with this funny scene of Bunce's security cameras, though Fox's attempt at hiding where these birds are coming from is getting Felicity more suspicious. Back to scenes at the school, we're shown Whack-Bat, a needlessly complicated game kind of similar to cricket. The coach pulls Ash out of the game to put Christopherson in, who does an incredible job despite never having even heard of the game before. At home again, Fox comes up with an excuse to leave so him and Kylie can steal from Bean. Ash wants to come along, but he gets sent home only for Christopherson to show up a little later, having actually been invited. They break into the cider cellar and meet Rat, who apparently Fox has a history with and who is currently security for Bean. The confrontation is cut short when Bean's wife enters the cellar to grab some cider, and we get this whole goofy bit where Fox definitely should have been caught. Bean himself opens the door for tension, but it just closes again, and the three get away. Bean summons the other two farmers for a meeting with a plan to kill Fox. Before then, we get Fox and Kylie sneaking back home, where Felicity vaguely confronts them. Once they exit the house again, they're shot at, surviving, but Fox loses his tail. The farmers plan to bring more supplies, and we go back into the tree, where Felicity is patching Fox back up, and Ash decides to be a dick to Christopherson again. A little bit later, the farmers are back to try and dig the family out, so they start digging themselves to escape. A Fox hour later, they stop in a little cave, and Felicity finally gets openly upset with her husband. Fox gives this wild animal line that he does a few times.
Because I'm a wild animal.
The farmers get excavators, and the Foxes plus Kylie have to dig even further. A bit later, we get some more Ash-Christopherson conflict, and find out Bean is wearing Fox's tail as a tie. Then they blow up even more of the ground to try and get at everyone, not managing to, but posting everyone at their collective farms up to shoot at anything that might appear. 2.5 Fox weeks later, and Badger digs in with some others, who are naturally upset at Fox for ruining everything. The bully guy is a bully, and I just want to show this awesome line delivery from Ash.
I'm not gonna eat much.
Christopherson sticks up for Ash and does some karate. Felicity gives a weird little talk to Ash before heading to the flint mine where Badger's wife and others are, before the remaining animals go with Fox's plan of stealing everything from the farmers with a funny little musical bit. This enrages Bean, who ends up coming up with a new idea. Cut down to the flint mine, and currently everyone is living pretty excellently. Ash develops an idea to steal his dad's tail back with Christopherson's help. This ends up going poorly because neither of them actually know where to look and get distracted by apple snaps. Dinner down in the mine also goes poorly because the farmers flood them out with bean cider. I also love this line delivery from Kylie.
Apple juice flood.
Anyway, Christopherson has been captured and everyone is dejected now. Fox and Felicity have a conversation and then he goes and talks to Ash to make Ash feel better. Fox then goes to give himself over to the farmers. The others try to look for Christopherson, not knowing he's been captured, at least until Rat appears and informs them. Rat attacks Ash in order to kidnap him since he's actually Fox's son. Fox was drawn back by the commotion and fights Rat, resulting in Rat's death from electrocution. Before he passes, he reveals Christopherson's location. Fox does a toast, arranges everyone, and forms a plan to rescue Christopherson. Fox puts his whack bat skills to use once more by throwing a whole bunch of flaming pine cones and lighting a whole bunch of fires. Others cause more distractions before Fox and Kylie grab a tiny motorcycle, Ash secretly tagging along. They sneak into an area on Bean's farm and end up facing a dog with rabies. Kylie and Ash head up the side of the building with Fox staying behind in order to distract the dog. There's a grate on the skylight, so Ash is the only one who can get into the attic. After a poorly tempted karate move, Ash does incidentally manage to free Christopherson by knocking over and breaking the crate he's in. Ash finally apologizes for being a dick. The foursome attempts to escape, but they are met with a small army. Ash does a whole bunch of athleticism to let the rabies dog out. This largely works, but gets Fox's tail torn to pieces. With everyone distracted, they get on their motorcycle and escape with the torn tail. There's a bit where they spot a wolf on the way back, and apparently the whole bit is a thing, meaning how much, as much as Fox claims he's a wild animal, he isn't really. Not like how the wolf actually is. Fox, the rest, they're all much more civilized. Our falling action shows the farmers adamantly refusing to give up watch over a sewer entrance, as we then see all of the animals living rather happily down in the sewer. Fox brings Felicity, Ash, Christopherson, Kylie, and now Agnes along as he shows them he's found an entrance into a supermarket, meaning they'll all have plenty of food for forever, I guess. Things end off with one final toast from Fox and a dance, as things have ultimately largely worked out. Whew! So that was the whole film in about 7 minutes. I do recommend actually watching the film, at least if you like Wes Anderson. I think it's a very good film, but you should be vaguely caught up enough, as long as I didn't go too fast, to understand everything I'm going to get into now. So, with all that out of the way, it's time to explain the whole point of this video. First, though, I want to take a small detour. This isn't technically relevant, but it's still interesting to take note of, because earlier this year, in February, I think, whoever has the publishing rights for Roald Dahl's books, because this is based on a Roald Dahl book. I probably could have mentioned that at the start, but I didn't do that. Anyway, whoever owns the rights decided to edit a bunch of them. Maybe all of them, I'm not sure. But the idea is to make them more accessible to modern kids or something like that. Really weird decision. And obviously it was met with backlash, though I think they went through with it anyway, because when I was looking this up, I did find out that Fantastic Mr. Fox, the book, got some edits. In the book, they have 4 children, but only one of them is relevant. And in the book, that child is a son. But in this rewrite, the child's instead a daughter. You can see why I think that's interesting. It doesn't have bearing on the film, but it seems like something worth just pointing out here. And I'm going to use this to springboard into another important thing to say, which is that obviously I am approaching this from a trans femme perspective. Feasibly, things could be read in a trans-masc way, I think, but I'm far from the person who would be able to do so, so I'm not going to entertain that idea. Also, of course, the film itself definitely did not intend this reading. And things here largely do all have an intended reading, like what they mean in the film. Though there is one that we'll get to that is interesting in this regard. So getting into it, there is what perhaps seems like a snag inherently in this idea when considering Ash's story through the film. Half of Ash's character is about wanting to impress and live up to Ash's dad, Mr. Fox. And rather than a takeaway of Ash doesn't need to, and that's okay, Ash ultimately does pull off some incredible athletic ability. However, that is only a snag in so much as believing that that's where a character growth will end when said character is literally 12. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume Ash could come to realize that this didn't bring the expected fulfillment, even when the film itself doesn't touch on that. So, let's get into some more specific aspects here. First and foremost, there's two things that stick out. On a couple occasions, characters say Ash dresses like a girl, and Ash is often called different, with characters doing this like hand gesture that makes it come off as being kind of rude.
I guess he's just different.
Yeah, a wet sandwich. He's too short, he dresses like a girl, he's different.
I know what it's like to feel different.
I'm just different, apparently.
The dresses like a girl bit is interesting because pretty quickly into the film, it's made clear that Fox and Felicity don't dress Ash up themselves. So why would Ash apparently dress like a girl? Thinking about it, I would say it's that deep down Ash is aware of these feelings, but that gets in the way of wanting to impress and live up to Fox with an incredible athletic ability, which Ash seems to value more. Being called different also gets in the way of that.
I'm not different. Am I?
We all are. Him especially. But there's something kind of fantastic about that, isn't there?
Not to me. I prefer to be an athlete.
This makes the conflict with Christopherson throughout the film also interesting in that, looking at it this way, it reads as Ash viewing Christopherson as the sort of ideal boy that Ash feels expected to be, or at least thinks that Ash ought to be. Ash's couple interactions with Agnes also are interesting when viewed under this light. In the first place, I'm honestly not sure if things are meant to be read as Ash having romantic interest in Agnes or not, as it seems to be more about the Christopherson conflict. But regardless, I think things can be read as Agnes representing the ideal girl that Ash deep down would like to be, largely helped by Agnes also being a fox. I probably wouldn't think that otherwise, but that connection there makes me think, okay, there's connective tissue here I can actually draw on. It's both, and the whole thing is both Ash wants to be cool and have attention, while also holding this desire, in a sense, to be Agnes. Another thing is Ash is also often called little, and this is generally in a rude way. It's more commentary on how Ash isn't the greatest athlete, but reading it in this trans way, it very much comes across as insecurity for Ash and adding on more onto the things preventing Ash from being viewed like how Christopherson is. The ideal boy isn't little, is athletic, isn't different. In all these ways, Christopherson seems to Ash to be what Ash is supposed to be, what is expected of Ash. All of it very much reads as an intentional pushing down of trans feelings, pursuing things that are supposed to be the correct things, because that's what's expected. The thing that really clinches this for me, though, what makes me think you can read Ash's characters as trans, is this interaction when Mr. Fox is telling the story from the beginning of the film.
Did I ever tell you about the time I learned we were going to have a cub?
In the fox trap.
Right. We were at gunpoint, and your mother
Says she's pregnant.
Let me tell it, okay? I had no idea how we were going to get out of this jam, and then it hit me. What do foxes do better than any other animal?
Dig.
You're stepping on my lines.
Right, keep telling it.
So we dug, and the whole time I put paw over paw, scooping dirt and pebbles with your mother digging like crazy beside me, I kept wondering, who is this little boy gonna be?
Or girl.
Or girl, right, because at that point we didn't know.
Right there. That's interesting, right? Why would Ash interject with that? This sort of thing where a character interrupts a baby story to imply the baby could have been a different sex is usually reserved for jokes where a parent wishes their son or their daughter was a daughter or son. But obviously, that isn't what's happening here. Ash being the one to interject, to say it, is therefore notable, I feel. I'm honestly not entirely sure how this moment is meant to come across, because truly and honestly, the trans reading is the strongest one I can take from it. I know I'm biased, of course I am. But this is such an interesting moment that really reads as a little bit of Ash's inner trans feelings showing themselves. Ash's entire character, I feel, can easily be read as a closeted trans girl who occasionally steeps into those feelings, but largely pushes them down for the sake of trying to be what she thinks would make her dad proud of her, that being an athletic boy. She feels threatened by her cousin, whom achieves that without much effort, because trying to be a boy takes so much effort from her. I didn't show the end of that clip of Mr. Fox sitting down and talking to Ash, so here it is.
Ash, I'm so glad he was you. It's not your fault. It's mine.
The apology bit is just about Fox taking responsibility for Kristofferson being captured, but the more interesting part is what he says before that and how Ash reacts. Calling Ash his son, and then tears. It's clear the film intends this to be read as Ash feeling emotional after actually receiving proper praise. I think Ash's expression, however, is interesting. It's not a happy expression. That could be because of continued self-blame, but I think it's really easy to read it as a closeted trans girl who is conflicted about being praised, but being praised for something she isn't. Everything that follows, where Ash is all in to win the day, be athletic, continues to read as an attempt to be the ideal boy, actually earn what her dad said about her. But I think after the end of the film, she'll ultimately find that that isn't fulfilling, not how she wanted, because she isn't a boy, ideal or not. That'll be hard and scary for her, which is why she avoids it the whole film. There'll never be a sequel to this, but I like to think that in-universe, Ash manages to figure herself out. Or I suppose I haven't convinced you on this reading of the film and Ash isn't trans at all. I hope what I've had to say makes enough sense, though. Or at least was an interesting analysis, whether you're trans femme or not. And regardless, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.